5 p.m. on Monday, November 7th, and I will call to order a workshop of the Red Wing School Board. We have Nikki Buck, Jennifer Tift, myself, and Jim Bryant here, as well as Superintendent Craig Norton. And I do not believe we have any board members attending virtually at this time. So, first thing up is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. And the first item that we have on our agenda is the Wells Fargo OPEB Trust Review. So I will let you take it away.
Very good, thank you. I have hard copies if anyone else would like a hard copy.
That'd be great. Watch your step with all the cords.
Dance through here.
You make a nice little obstacle course. Thank you.
Yeah.
Morale, if you want me to advance, just let me know.
Okay. I can, you'll advance from back.
I can
Okay.
advance from back. Yep.
Let's go then to, if we would, to just the first page. One more. It's labeled as no page numbers on it. So just let's go back before that. A couple before that. It's just titled Red Wing Public Schools OPEB Trust. Perfect, right there. Let's start there just for a moment. Just some very high level summary information for those of you who may be a little bit new to the OPEB Trust. This actually goes back to September of 2009. The trust, or the type of trust, is an irrevocable trust. Wells Fargo is trustee and investment manager of the trust. So think irrevocable versus a revocable trust. Governing law for this, so what really drives the investment process or the investment strategy here is a state statute, Minnesota State Statute 356A, very specific to OPEB trusts. The most recent actuarial report, so every 2 years you are required to get an actuarial report that establishes an obligation or an OPEB obligation, again, OPEB, other post-employment benefits. As of fiscal year end, June 30th, 2022, you can see the current OPEB obligation there of $4.6 million. And we'll look in a moment. This is a wonderful position to be in. The market value of the portfolio is about $9.2 million. So you're basically 200% funded at this point with the trust. And that's, again, in a pretty difficult and challenging year in the markets. The investment objective there, moderate growth and income. And that's really a portfolio strategy that's a blend of growth and income, if you will. And the portfolio life, we reference greater than 10 years, but we're talking really much longer than 10-year periods of time here. So if we will, then go to the first page. The portfolio, perfect. What I wanted to point out here is the column that's towards the middle. So the bottom part of the page, there's a target allocation column. And so that's what lays out, if you will, in writing, the agreed to investment allocation targets that we have for the trust. So 46% for fixed income, 48% for equities, and then we have a 6% allocation target for a category that we call real assets. So think of real estate, commodities may fall in there, so hard assets. That investment policy, or those target allocations, are actually documented in a document that we call an investment policy statement. So it's very clear what the targets are that we have, the ranges around those targets that we can operate within. So that's really, again, what governs how we manage the portfolio. You can see just to the column to the left of that, the current allocation column. We are generally in line with the overall targets. Where we are a bit underweight is within equities, but that's mostly a function, well, partly a market function as well. You know, at times we're a little bit over, maybe, and a little bit under given what the market has done this year. But we're a little bit overweight in the real estate or the real assets category, and then just a little bit of extra cash at this point in time that we're holding. So generally speaking, I would look at it from the perspective of being neutral to our allocation targets at this point. I'm just going to stop there. Just any questions so far, allocation targets. They have changed over time. Initially, it was more closer to 40% equities, 40% fixed income. And then we had a 20% target for real assets and other types of alternatives. We continued to modify that and adjust it over time. And so again, we've arrived at that 46, 48, 6% targets that we have. And those have been in place for a couple of years.
I just gotta ask, how long has that been in place?
Yeah, it's been a couple of years. And that's probably the biggest change we've made as well, is going from having that 20% in that, think of other types of investments, to much more, much lower allocation to that. It's, 356A, so statute 356A actually, in addition to being able to invest in equities, publicly traded equities and fixed income or bonds, it actually allows you to invest in other asset classes like private equity, venture capital, the commodities, the real estate. And so we did have a larger target early on, but just over time, a lot of those types of investments are more on the illiquid side of things. So in other words, they don't trade. You may not be able to say, okay, I want to sell half of it and know that you're going to get your cash. And we just felt that for portfolios like this, trusts like this, we wanted them liquid. We wanted cash available if it was there. So we've just worked that 20% target down over time. We'll actually see in a moment when we look at performance that the one bright spot of the portfolio this year has been the real estate component. So we'll look at that in a moment. Other questions?
I remember a couple of years ago, when we had the finance committee came before us, we started massaging that down a little bit, that number. I remember we had that conversation.
Yep. And the other change, I guess the other bigger change we made in when we first funded this, so think back to late 2007 and then of course 2008 with the financial crisis, the housing market. In 2009, it was hard to think about buying equities with public funds at that point. And so one of the other big allocation changes we've made over time is early on, we actually had a target for 10% just in cash. And we had that set aside so that you could fund a distribution should the securities markets still be very volatile. And again, over time, we've moved away from that as well. And I'm very comfortable with the allocation that you have at this point. It's not just focusing on growth and income. It's also a nice balance, or it's a good mix of risk and return, if you will, at this point. So, other questions? Okay. Next page. We just keep a running history here of what we call just receipts and disbursements. So this just goes back to the initial funding of the trust back on October 22nd of 09. So the date of the trust, September of 09, funding in October, and then each of the disbursements.
Well, why don't you go ahead and kind of explain what the disbursements are for the board, so
I knew you were going to ask that question. So I may.
It may be, is it for, I think I know, but it's, they're not, I don't know if they're all at one time or not, so.
They are a one-time, and they're based on audit guidance that you get as well on the audit side that you get, but it is a one-time disbursement each year.
Health insurance of the
Yes. Yep, health insurance. And there will be one, we were talking earlier, Jackie and I earlier, that there'll be another one coming up yet this year. And that is all computed for you through the actuarial study.
So we get the disbursement and then just hold it to disperse as we kind of need to, or
It's in
or we
arrears.
make a lump sum.
It's in arrears. So like the December 15th, 2021 disbursement was for the prior school year.
So paying back all of the things that we
Correct.
pulled out. Got it, okay.
Correct. Yep, good question. The other thing that we're trying to do with this page is, in our industry, we tend to talk percentage rates of return, percentage this, percentage that. And what we're doing here, so the very bottom row where you see net increase in market value and then the gray shaded box. We're just trying to put this in dollar terms. I mean, a lot of times it's a lot easier to just understand what the returns have been. What's the actual dollar gain here? So that $6.2 million is the actual dollar gain. So interest, dividends, growth in stock prices, the real estate funds. That's the actual dollar gain that's occurred in the portfolio. Okay. In terms of performance then, the next page. This is as of September 30th, so a little bit dated. October was actually a very good month in the equity markets. In fact, and this is an old index if you think of it this way, but the Dow Jones, the 30 industrials, the Dow Jones was up 14.4% just in the month of October. That was the best single month in the Dow return since 1976. What we tend to use today, the S&P 500, a more common index, that was up 8.8%. And so just note in looking through here, and I actually have an estimate that I can tell you through October, but this is all through the end of September here. So we're a little bit dated with that. But at the very bottom, and here's again was where we get into percentage numbers or percentage rates of return, but that year-to-date column at the bottom, and you'll see a negative 14.98. So that is the year-to-date return of the trust through September. The estimate through the end of October, I'm estimating the trust was up about 2.4% for the month. So somewhere in the neighborhood of down about 12.5% year-to-date or through the end of October. Just to give you some sense, this has been an unusual year. In prior years, at least for the last 14 years, anytime we had some type of sell-off in the equity market, we could always look at, and so the first component of returns here that you'll see where it says fixed income. So on the left-hand side, and if you follow that top line over, you'll see a negative 7.58%. So prior periods, when we were having meetings like this, we could say, yep, the equity market was down 20, but your bond returns are positive 2 or positive 3. And that was when interest rates were at 0. That's when the Federal Reserve could say, we're going to keep rates at 0. Don't worry, we're going to continue to stimulate the market. We're going to stimulate the economy. Well, that's not happening today, and nor can it happen today. In fact, they're doing the exact opposite. We've had a major swing the other way. Think of a teeter-totter. The relationship between interest rates and bond prices are just like a teeter-totter. So in prior declines in the equity market, rates are at 0 or pushing down. Bond prices were up. You could always look to that bond piece and see, okay, that's something stabilizing the portfolio. That didn't happen this year. So you see the negative 7.58%. That's bond price declines, generally speaking. Now, a lot of that will recover as they reach maturity because bonds, you have a stated value at the end. So a lot of that will recover. Nonetheless, through the end of September, down 7.58%. Now, if you compare that to all of the rows below that, those are different benchmarks that exist in the industry. And so, and you would think you were looking at equity returns when you look at those numbers. I mean, they're very equity-like. But we have been very, very defensive in the type of fixed income that we own. Very, very high quality, all U.S. and short term. And so that negative 758, while it's a negative 758, I feel good about that. You look at some of those other returns and those various benchmarks that we have there. On the next page then, and I'm sorry to spend so much time getting into the nuts and bolts of performance, but I think it's helpful to understand that fixed income piece in particular this year. And then year to date, that same column, year to date on the next page, equities there down 25. And you'll see really a range from about down 23 to down 27, down 28. We are very, very heavily tilted towards domestic equities. More so than any time I can remember. I've been with Wells for 32 years, 26, 27 doing this, and we've never had more of an overweight to domestic equities. Think Russia, Ukraine, what's going on with Europe. I'll talk about this in a moment, just what our outlook is, but in terms of just the recession underway in Europe and the challenges that they have, we just want to be out of that area. And even within domestic equities, we're attempting to be as defensive as possible, emphasizing what we call large caps. So think the really big companies, the companies with the strongest, biggest balance sheets. And so we're very defensive in our structure there. But even with that, down 25% through the end of September. And then the bright spot of the portfolio, we should have started there, but almost 10% of the portfolio in 2 different real estate funds that actually have a positive 10, almost 11% rate of return again through September. And I've seen estimated pricing through the end of October up a little bit more through October as well. And what the benefit is in those funds, they're private funds They're considered commercial real estate investments, but about 65% of each of the funds is invested in multifamily housing. And if you think about the lack of supply of single family residential homes in the United States, the unit numbers there range from 5 to 6 million homes we're lacking. So the only alternative that exists out there is multifamily housing. So apartments, duplex, those types of things. And demand there has continued to be very, very well, or very strong. So pricing there has continued to do well. So when you roll and all of that together, that's where you get that negative 1458 through the end of September. So just since I threw a lot out there, just any questions? And maybe the most important number, back on the first page of that far right-hand column, since inception, about 3.7% annualized. I mean, that's ultimately what we're really looking at here. The objective that we've always had laid out is somewhere in the 4.5% range, because that really tied back to the actuarial studies, and that was the rate of return that was sufficient. Let the trust last a long time, meet all the obligations. Obviously, with the declines this year, that's pulled back, but we've always been running in that 4% plus category. And we will get back there eventually.
Do you think would have been at 4 or higher than 4 if we hadn't slid back this last
Oh, yeah.
year?
Yeah.
Been 5 probably?
You could have been close to 5, yeah.
I'd say there's some good years since
Yeah.
09.
Yeah.
And
And
8. When it,
yeah, and early on, the more cautious we were, the more costly, frankly, it was to returns, because once the market turned in March of 09, I mean, it was, we were off to the races, but we had cash, we had a lot of fixed income, and for years, fixed income did nothing. In fact, you can see right below that 369, you see the 1.34%. So if you would have invested, taken the route of all fixed income, only fixed income, many districts did, you would have earned 1.3% going back to January 1 of 2010. So for the last 12 and a half years, you would have earned 1%, 1.3. Now, granted, it shows 3.69, and the spread isn't as big as what it had been. But eventually, once the equity market recovers, we'll be back up in that 4 to 5% range. So.
With real estate doing so well, is there thought to readjust the allocation?
Great question. That's already underway. Great question. Yes. One of the two funds we've owned a long time in the portfolio, the principal real estate fund, gosh, that goes back 10 years plus. That's just grown to be a bigger piece than we'd like to see. So yes, I actually a month and a half ago filled out some paperwork to get that underway. Again, there's quarterly liquidity with those funds. So eventually we'll pare that back a little bit. Very good question. Other questions? The last section, I should say then too, there are pages in here as well with all of the detail of all of the holdings or the investments. And then the last section I've just titled Economic and Market Overview. I can just speak very quickly to, those aren't the best slides really to condense what our view is for the rest of the year and the next year. So we are very much in the camp of a U.S. recession in 2023. We've been saying that. That's been our view since the latter part of 2022. The track record of the Fed, the Federal Reserve Bank, being able to raise or increase interest rates the way they're having to do it now because of the inflationary environment. Their track record, and it's not a criticism, it's just how the economy works, but the ability to raise rates like they've been raising them and not cause a recession is just not very good. The data is just all there. So that is our view for 2023. Early on, we were thinking more of a short, shallow recession. The economy was so strong, and frankly, in some parts continues to be pretty strong. But the pace of interest rate increases here and the fact that they'll raise rates another 0.5% at the end of December when they meet again. They meet every 7 weeks. They met last week, raised by 0.75 points. They'll raise a 0.5 point in December. At least that's the current thinking. It could be 0.75% again. Should inflation come out stronger again. The inflation data comes out this Thursday. But we very much think recession, so more of a moderate recession actually in 2023. Now that sounds awfully pessimistic, but what we have to do is separate what the economy is doing with what the stock market or the securities markets can do. And they do act differently. The stock market's always anticipating. If you think about it, stock market this year on January 4th started heading down already, and the economy was still booming in January and even in February and March and April. So it was anticipating that eventually the Fed would have to raise rates, that the Fed would have to raise rates in a big way, and it would ultimately cause a recession. So we looked back at the last 9 recessions. So going back post World War II, there've been 9. So since 46, or the last one in 46, first one in 46, post World War II. In all 9 of those, on average, the stock market has already bottomed out and begun to move up 4 months before the end of the recession. So we could be talking about, poor economic news or data well into next year, but the equity market can already be moving back up. So even though I'm sounding somewhat pessimistic about 23, the fact is the equity market, securities markets can actually do okay. And we've continued to maintain, even in saying that we expect the recession, that year end, by next year end, we think the equity market from current levels can be up maybe somewhere in the mid-teens from here. So patience is probably the biggest thing right now. We just need to work through what's happening. With what the Fed is doing, there's always a lag to that. And we're starting now to see, first it's the housing market. If you think about mortgage rates going from 3 to 7, that's going to do the housing market. So the housing market is being impacted. You're starting to see, in particular in the technology sector, a lot of layoffs being announced, just anticipating a downturn in advertising and those types of things. And ultimately what you'll see, and what we think we'll see, is a lot of corporate America for fourth quarter and guidance into 2023, starting to say that earnings are not going to be what we expected them at the start of 2022. So that all will just continue to keep filtering through. Eventually the Fed, and we actually think by the second half of next year, the Fed will be lowering rates. So we went from 0 to, we're going to go up to maybe on short-term rates, maybe 5-ish. And by the second half of next year, they're going to be lowering rates. And that generally is bad news for the economy, if you will, because they're lowering rates because the economy is so weak. But bad news is good news for the equity market, which sounds kind of silly, but that is how it works. So all is not lost. Patience. It's going to take a bit. I really do think it'll take a bit. It's probably the back half of next year before we really start feeling good about, the securities markets. But maybe the one last comment there is, in saying that, oftentimes clients will say then, well, why don't we do something at least for the next 6 months or 7 months to just kind of take some risk off the table and step back? Well, going back and looking at those same 9 recessions, the average return 6 months from when the equity market bottoms out, and you never know when the market's bottoming. All you know, you can look backwards and you'll say, okay, well, it bottomed there. But what we do know is that in those 9 recessions, the average return for the equity market 6 months after the end of when it bottoms out is about 36%. And it's in the 40s, 12 months out. So when the market begins to recover, it can move pretty quickly. So that's where you stick with that nice mix that you have. You've got 40% plus in fixed income. That's kind of that stabilizing piece, and you just have to be patient and work through it. So I'll end there. I took a lot of time. I'm sorry, but
So just, what's Wells Fargo thinking the recession, how long it's going to last compared to post World War II?
yeah. So we were thinking early on, maybe as early as mid 2022, start of the recession, and then maybe the first part of 23 ending. Now we've just pushed that out. So, we think the recession begins and ends both in 23. So, 6, 7, 8 months, probably something like that. It's very hard to predict something like that. But
you've studied it more than we have.
Yeah.
That's why we asked.
Yeah. Typically, just some other things to think about when the Fed is raising rates, the length of time on average, again, at times like this, from when they do the first one to the last one is 15 months. They did the first one this year in March. So we have some time to go before they're potentially done raising rates. But again, they're going to continue to raise rates based on the economy, which can continue to be weakening when the stock market's already saying, okay, well, it's getting kind of close to the end of that 15 months. So we're going to start going up now. And so you have these cross currents going on. And again, you just need to stay, as long as nothing has changed in terms of the risk profile, cash needs, anything like that. It's a nice mix. We've continued to make adjustments here in the portfolio. Again, all those changes we've made to be more defensive. And so it's not fun, but.
Jackie, can you just remind us how the OPEB obligation is determined and then how that changes over time? Like, we're not continually adding to that at this point, right? It changes depending on how long we're paying out, or?
The OPEB obligation is an actuarial defined number. So every 2 years we go through an actuarial determination. Our actuary asks for the ages of our staff, who we're paying out on, what contract they're under, all of their benefits. It's quite a large data set we send to our actuarial firm, and then they spit out an obligation. For the numbers we pull down every year out of the trust, that is the actual amount we've paid out in retiree insurance for the prior fiscal year, plus an actuarial determined implicit rate subsidy. And the implicit rate subsidy, what that is an actuarial determined amount that our health insurance premiums are inflated because we still have retirees on our plan.
Thank you, Merle.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. It'll be better next time. So,
Cross our fingers, right?
Get that in writing.
well,
Yeah.
I can't do that, but thank you.
Okay. I suppose you can just stay put, because next up is our finance.
Yeah, if you just, 1 second, my notes are on my table yet. All right, so I'm going to try to have a quick update tonight. I know you have a lot to talk about later in the agenda. I'm just going to ask, is there any questions on the September treasurer's report? I won't pull that up to
I
show.
do have a question.
Yes.
In the August report, we talked about finalizing the numbers for June 30th of 2022. And I don't see anything in this report to indicate that. Can you get that information down the road to us, please?
Yes, so, for the treasurer's report?
Yeah, last treasurer's report you had in there, we're still coming up, the numbers
Oh.
aren't all in yet for the last fiscal year. Can you get those numbers, see where we end up down the road?
Yep. Any other comments on the treasurer's report? All right, I do have the budget report up here on the screen. This is our first look at this fiscal year. Finally, in September, we have some data that is starting to make this look like something that needs to be looked at. We don't do a lot of spending in August and September, or July and August, so other than salaries. So revenue-wise, we have received about $4.8 million. 12.84% of our general fund budget compared to 13.3 and 12.02. So our revenue collection looks like it's on budget, being between our two prior years there. You will see June 30th, 2022 numbers in here. These are pretty close to final. We are looking at an audit report for December 5th. That's when it worked out in the auditor's schedule this year. So we'll have that along with our truth and taxation meeting on December 5th. For expenditures, we have expended $6,487,585, or 17% of our revised or adopted budget, compared to 14.32 and 14.72. You'll notice that's higher, and I want to tell you why it's higher. So if you look at the other expenditures, it looks like we've expended $373,939. Well, when I ran this report, I found an error. When we were reversing audit entries, there was an entry for tuition that got reversed twice.
Oh.
So instead of zeroing it out, it looks like there's a $350,000 expense. So that is a correction I'll make here I'll make it in October. So when we look at the October reports, this will be correct.
Good catch.
Yep, and it'll actually bring that down closer to the 14%. Other things that are running ahead, but not terribly ahead, you'll see some, the equipment, we've spent 54% compared to 32% last year, but 77% the year before. That's one that fluctuates just upon when we're doing our purchasing. So that is the general fund. Page 2 of the summarized report goes through our other funds. The fund we were talking about tonight would be that OPEB irrevocable trust. That is where all of those funds sit and where they are expended out of. They don't touch our general fund at all. Are there any questions on the budget report for September 30th? All right, I will keep going. Enrollment tracking. So you will note here that we are still 22.95 WATMs or pupil units ahead of budget. I do still want to put a caution on this with the tuition out numbers. I'm still using last year final. We have 2 more submissions of fall MARS with errors cleaning up, and then I'll start using the fall data. We had a submission, a statewide edit that ran over the weekend, and I looked at that today, and it's not 202, it's 165. So there could be, unless there are still a lot of errors cleaning up, enrollment might not be good news. So we'll keep watching that. There's another submission in December with a final submission in early January. Any questions on enrollment?
Can you say those numbers again, please? Like the 200?
So right now, at the end of last year, we had 202 students that had tuitioned out to another program, mostly to GCED programs, but they could be in other programs as well throughout the state. As of this weekend's fall MARS submission, we were about 165 students that had been submitted error-free as tuition out.
So there's a gap,
A gap.
large gap.
About 40 student gap, yes. Yes.
Oof.
Oof. So it'll probably take away this 20 student positive on this report and maybe knock it down to where we're 20 students negative.
Will that MARS report show what grades are?
Yep.
Bidable?
Yep. So as we keep watching that, I can know, I'll put in the grades and we'll keep watching it. The last part of my report is just what COVID funds we have received to date. We still have a couple we have not done any spending in, but we have planned spending for. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Okay, so next up is more discussion about the superintendent evaluation and search. So I don't know, we invited Craig Morris to be here again, and thank you for coming. I don't know if anyone has questions they've thought of since the last meeting that they would like to ask off the bat, or I believe we did add this as a topic during the regular meeting as well, so that we could, vote on any decisions that we wanted to make about that. So this would just be the time to have discussion and ask questions. So.
I think first of all, we need to figure out and make it clear what the evaluation, what we are expecting from the evaluation and what that means for future contract. I just know last time we had a discussion, there was some confusion on what the evaluation meant, just to make sure that we are clear on the contract and everything that was expected there. So I don't know if Jim, I know you were part of
Contract, I
that.
think the contract is pretty explanatory.
Okay,
It states that, I think it's the evaluation. I thought we were in agreement of the contract, and we approved it, and Pam pulled it up, we called and read it. There was nothing in there about the December. It was just verbally, we talked about it. If we wanted to go forward with Mr. Norton, we would negotiate a new contract in January.
Okay.
That's, I believe, what we were discussing at some point then. My error on that, I didn't realize we were gonna have this discussion again, so I just wasn't prepared. But I think that's what it was. Am I right?
That's what I remember.
that's what I remember from the
Okay.
contract as well. I just wanted to, so then we need to figure out the evaluation. We had started talking about using a larger tool, going into it more in depth, and do we do that? Do we, just what are we looking at moving forward to make sure that Mr. Norton knows what our expectations are? And if we know that if indeed we need to decide by January about renewing the contract, then we need to get going on this.
Chair, if I may,
Yes.
my plea tonight is I promise to be good, be brief, and be gone, unlike the last meeting.
You're fine for last time.
And I'm honored to be invited back. Thank you so much. I want to try to help here, and if I may. At the last meeting, and just to recap briefly, I talked about the good work that's going on, the fact that the district financially, your financials are solid, your infrastructure is solid, you have good leadership, and you have a number of initiatives underway trying to address the gaps, but also your commitment to equity and inclusion. And I use those two words only, not to exclude diversity, but I think if you have a diverse population in this community, you have had a diverse population in this community, and if you do equity and inclusion well, you will continue to have diversity. What I'm going to say what I'm about to say tonight is a bit broad, but in all honesty, I want to separate contract from the assessment for just a moment. You have a contract. You have some decisions to be made about how you're going to assess, and it's the person in the position and their work. In my line of work and my experience, it's extremely difficult to come up with an assessment tool in such a short period of time that Mr. Norton has been serving, really stepping up to the plate and taking on a huge task, especially during these times. It's my understanding, and I have asked, I've shared with you that I've been in conversation with Minnesota School Boards Association, and specifically Barb Dorn, who has joined us tonight, because I want Barb to also know what I'm sharing with you, since they are your consultant. It's my understanding that some of you did participate or attended a workshop approximately a year ago. And it might be good just to pause. This is not a political statement, and regardless of how the election turns out, which I'm sure is on everyone's mind, but I think it might be worthy of some time and consideration after the election to come back and re-examine this question of what are those things that are really important to the district in terms of your goals, objectives, your mission, and given the short period of time that Mr. Norton has been in this assignment, what realistically and pragmatically is important for him to know about how he's doing or what your expectations are. Now, I haven't been privy to those conversations, and out of respect to each of you, I don't know what has been shared or what has not been shared. But I will say as an HR professional, it's extremely important that you be clear about expectations and that those expectations are well communicated, thoughtful, but also realistic. It's hard stepping into the role of being the interim or the incumbent. as I shared with you during the last meeting, and Frank, I'm taking some liberties here, but it's like having your foot on the brake and the gas at the same time. And that usually doesn't bode well for a vehicle, and it doesn't usually bode well for individuals, people as well. I think it's also important that you take some time as a board, whether that's a new board or the same board. And I know we have a candidate who I just met tonight, so thank you for stepping forward, but to bring them into this conversation and to make sure there's a level playing field, right? That you're having an inclusive conversation. These are really important questions. And whether you decide to conduct a search, not conduct a search, appoint, that's down the road. If Frank is willing and if you're willing to extend his contract. Now, maybe you're not willing to do that. I don't know. But I'm just saying, if you look at the slides I gave you, you have some options, you have some choices. And I think it's perhaps more important to take the time to really have those conversations in a workshop setting amongst yourselves. And in fairness to Frank or anyone else who may come forward, that you're really clear about those things. So that Frank is known and the direction from the board is clear. Because as Frank is leading this district, and all indications doing a very good job of that, you want to make sure that that continues. And in all fairness to Frank, he is looking for that from you, I would think, and wants to be clear about those things so that he has clear direction from you as a board. How can I help? I get the sense that you are coming, you all have some thoughts on this, but I want to make sure there's clarity tonight, that you at least have some consensus about how you might proceed. And again, I want to invite Barb into this conversation, who is on with you, because I'm not here speaking for your consultant, but I'm speaking with your consultant.
As far as like deciding what we're going to do, we can't really make decisions in the workshop, but my feelings about like the evaluation is that, Frank has only been doing this job for a short period of time, so it's not realistic or fair to expect that, he's moved mountains in a couple of months. But I think, like we've kind of talked about before, seeing like the progress towards those goals. And, the evidence that he has said that, to kind of provide, or for us to say, I haven't seen how this has been worked on, and to be able to have that conversation so that then, Frank knows like, oh, I need to give more information about this thing that we're doing because the board doesn't understand it, or, whatever the case may be, for us to kind of look at that. So I don't think it's, in my mind anyway, doing an evaluation in December isn't necessarily saying Frank is doing a great job or Frank is doing a bad job, but like this is the progress towards where we're going, and these are the strengths and these are areas that we might want to work on, and just more kind of a fluid opportunity for conversation and to kind of measure where things are at a little bit, but without it just being like not like a yes or a no, not just black or white of good or bad, but more of a conversation of seeing where things are at and what we're noticing or not noticing, or those types of things, and what we're hearing from the community. But I don't think of it, I guess, as a be all and end all, pass or fail kind of thing, but more of just a conversation, I guess. I don't know if that's what you're looking for.
That was a lot of information right there. Here's what I'm kind of looking for. Frank's been on the job since July 12th. So what is today? November 7th. So basically 12 weeks, all right? Oh, maybe it's longer. Maybe it's longer than that.
I can't do
Maybe
that.
it's 16 weeks, whatever. Here's what I expect. I expect more. I haven't seen it yet. I'll be honest. I haven't seen the communication part with board members. I see him. I haven't seen him for 3 weeks. I haven't heard from him for 3 weeks. I think that is vital for us, especially somebody new, to communicate with us what's kind of going on and stuff. I hope this referendum passes tomorrow. It'd be the work of Ann and Martina and Frank. I was hoping to hear more about them in the community. I haven't really heard anything of them out there. So I'm kind of gauge going forward, and I like him. I'm not faulting him as a person. I'm just saying as a board, as his boss, I don't hear from him. And I've asked him in my meetings, would you ready to talk to them? It hasn't happened. So I think I should have maybe reached out to him, but I think I did it 3 times in like 4 or 5 weeks, and I think I didn't want to burden him. So I was hoping we could have more of that. Instead of me always telling him that, I wanted you all to hear it too.
Mhm.
And does anybody else hear from him? I mean, I heard from him, I should say, one time on somebody that left here. You asked me to call him. He asked me to call him. So yeah, I was all on board to continue on, but I want to see that communication piece between somebody, one of the 7 to supervise him and all of us, not just 1 or 2 or 3.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't want that happening, only that he's only communicating with a small amount of people. So,
what does that look like? I mean, I think we need to, if that's something that we need, it needs to be clear to Mr. Norton what that looks like. What are our expectations? Does it mean, I know we have superintendent, information at each meeting where he's sharing information. Do we need more there? Do we need individual meetings with everyone? Do we need, a blanket email going out with, this is what I'm doing? Do we need more updates on the goal sheet that we had talked about previously? To see more regular updates on those particular goals that Mr. Norton had come up with. I think it needs to be clear what that looks like.
that's a good question. We should, I'm not trying to pick on him, we want to help him. We want him
Right,
to
exactly.
succeed.
That's what I'm
But
saying.
if we're not knowing what's going on, we can't let him, help him succeed. And so I don't know what that is without violating the open meeting law and all that. I get that.
Chair Ostendorf, Director Bryant, again, in the spirit of trying to help you this evening, it is more often than not a case where a superintendent obviously is accountable to the board, but generally meets with the chair or the vice chair on a more routine basis, perhaps weekly, and then in a pre-meet as you get ready for meetings, workshops. What I'm hearing from Director Bryant is a strong plea for some mechanism by which more direct communication about the superintendent's activities in the community might occur. Is that what I'm hearing, Director Bryant?
Well, I'm sure he's busy and he doesn't need to take time to tell us individually what he's doing, but some type of communication to see that he's okay, instead of me bothering him, or so to speak. I feel like I'm bothering him if I just reach out to him. I don't know how others are doing it either.
And has this been communicated to Mr. Norton previously?
To a degree it has, yeah.
Can I say something? Okay, first of all, I think this evaluation go after we get our new boards on, because I think it was really considerate for Pam as our chair when we joined to wait with any major decision-making until the 3 of us got on. So I'm gonna stand very firm in that stance. And I like the direction. It's not, it's just to give Jim what he wants to know on the progress. So I agree with how we proceed with that. I have communication, and sometimes I don't need communication with Frank, because you know what? Frank kind of moves like Nikki Buck. We're more versus, but Nikki Buck's really good at the same time, whereas Frank may not have that strong suit, like our former superintendent did, because he is not our former superintendent. He is a whole other person with a whole other skill set. And so like being able to have these workshops and our expectations of Frank, and Frank, maybe we can, help you. Do you need help with somebody to help, communicate what you're actually doing, just to give the board like an update or whatnot. But I do feel like it's hard for the people who work so much to communicate all the time when you're overwhelmed with the situations. We have a joke on Prairie Island when you are in employment. Duties as assigned. But sometimes that's probably not a joke anymore because now we've taken on 3 people jobs. So these are the conversations we need to be having at the table. You know, like I talked to Frank and I can tell you that we have done almost a 180 compared to last year. And I can tell you, especially with our Indigenous students. So, but those are the things you wouldn't know unless I told you. So I think having this what are our expectations? Having this conversation and then involving you in that, like, how can we help you be the best superintendent you can be? That's what I think how we should proceed with that. I don't have to unmute myself.
I agree. And again, I see things happening that aren't coming directly from Mr. Norton. I see a lot of things happening that I know he is behind. And so it's just how do we all see that? You know, how are we all made aware of that?
I think to your point, Nikki, I think it's really important for the incoming board, regardless of how much change is involved in that, to make the decision about, you know, where we go as far as, you know, hiring or contracts or that type of thing. But I think the evaluating, I feel like that we could do before then because we've already worked with Frank for a few months. So for us to be able to say what we see so far, I just remember I remember it differently than you, that as an incoming board member being asked to evaluate somebody that like, I didn't know, you know what I mean? Like I knew our superintendent at the time, but in a very different context than as a board member. So I couldn't really answer like a lot of the questions, or I felt like I couldn't because I thought like, I don't know, I don't have that context to put it into, you know what I mean? So, I mean, I guess there's pros and cons to both, but I think getting the input from the board members who, you know, have worked with Frank over the last few months, I think is important too, even if those board members aren't going to continue on, you know, like in January. So I don't know how to.
Yes, but it feels very rushed, and the rest of us have been very vocal about that rushing process. So there's no need to rush. This is the problem with the system. We follow way too many laws and rules and uphold policies that still keep the people who are struggling in the struggle. When are we going to change? When are we going to do something different? You guys don't bury people in your community. I do. I don't have time to wait to change. My cousin, this district failed. My people, I don't have time to wait. This feels very rushed, and I say this is why no ethnic people join this. Do you see what I'm going through at this moment? All of you? I don't have time to wait for change. I am burying people at an astronomical rate, and so will all of you until you take the leap to jump to change. We can't stay in this dysfunction any longer. I need a moment to myself.
So Mr. Norton, what do you think would be helpful for you? You know, I mean, certainly it's our responsibility to do the evaluations and to, you know, make the decisions, but what kind of timeline do you think would work best for you for evaluation? You know, and maybe every 6 months is too much, maybe it's not enough. You know, what do you think? What's your sense, or what do you feel like would be helpful for you to move forward? If you feel comfortable being put on
No,
the
that's
spot,
okay, because I
sorry.
want to be able to help the board as well. So from my standpoint, if you can recall, at one point, you asked that kind of a question as to what do you feel you can accomplish?
Mhm.
Because you have been in the district before for a short period of time as the assistant, or as the principal of the high school. what do you feel you could accomplish? And I laid out a few things that I saw from the background. These are some things that I think would really help the district. These are we've already talked about the plan, the 5-year plan, year 4, 3, all those. We need to continue with our PLC process, which is a part of the strategic plan. We need to continue to work on our ethnic and diversity programming within the district and everything that we talked about before. And one of the things that one of the past meetings was talked about, how can you as a board see what I'm doing in that regard? But there was never a true, here's how it's going to happen. Here's how I will show you how that happens. I put it into a Google form for you to be able to look at, to be able to say, these are some of the objectives that I would like to be able to accomplish in this time period. And I'd like to be able to, without numbers, because I realized the board was a little split. I don't think Arlen liked numbers. And some of you like comments. I think, Jim, you talked about, I just want to listen. I just want to hear it talk about it. Others wanted to be able to quantify it to some degree. So I came up with something that allowed us to be able to do both of those at the same time. I thought, what I would like to be able to do is have those conversations with the board from time to time in this kind of a setting. Here's what I have been doing. Here's what's happening, and have that conversation here. My conversations so far have been with what Craig was just talking about with Anna as the board, and then disseminating that basically out, as opposed to calling individual people. Because I didn't want to be able to say, I got a hold of Jim, but then I needed to be able to call. I started with that when some of the board members wanted it initially. I did individual phone calls and tried to get a hold of individual people, and it just didn't really work very well. I was waiting for phone calls back. I felt that there was a time period where, and it happened, by the time I got a hold of that person, they said, I've already heard. So individual phone calls or follow-ups really don't work in this system, because you have jobs, and I've got 3,000 kids that I'm tending to. So I went back basically to being able to, if you had something, to communicate with Anna as the board chair and with Arlen, and then individuals who would reach out. I take phone calls from people if they have something specific that they're looking for. Each person in here basically has an example of that over the last month, at a minimum, basically. And I've met with a few of you. If it isn't the individuals that you're looking for, then I'd have to go with that. Other than that, I can bring what's happening in the district to you at a workshop like this. Now, the administrative update basically could happen, but it would really be background information as to what's happening. And I can include it in that, but it's not business related. It's instructional. It's, here's where we were, here's what I've done so far. And they're usually bigger items that I bring to you, but not all of the background things that you're talking about, Jennifer, that this has to change. Here's how I've initiated that change, and here's what's happening. This was in the 4-year plan. This is the item that I've been working on as an objective, and here's where I am in that objective. None of that is happening, because there's 40 of them. And I'm working on all 40 at basically the same time with the people that I'm in charge of and the people that I'm helping to be able to facilitate those things. I don't do them myself, I delegate, and then I watch and I monitor and I say, that's going well, here's what or it's not going the direction I want it to go. The equity work, I know there's a group that's working on it, Nick, you were just there. That work, I monitor that, and I ask Martina, where are we with that? We're meeting this coming Monday. Okay, can you let me know how that goes when that is all over with? And then I'll help you to any degree that I can. It's background work, and that's what really I do. And I can report out on that, or we could have a workshop to be able to report out on that. Right now, what I'm doing is I'm taking each of those pieces that I just talked about, and they're in that document. I'm just putting them in as sort of artifacts like we talked about, so that they're fresh in my mind as they go through. I'll use safety as an example, which I've been, which was one of the other ones. Each time that I put a puzzle piece in place, as I'm using Shonda, for example, and now we've got We went through and we in-serviced each one of the buildings, and I went to all of them. So 6 different presentations, went to those 6 different presentations and participated in that with Shonda and with Anna. Everyone now knows what to do if they see someone on grounds that's not supposed to be there. If a phone call comes in, and what are they supposed to be doing when they're in there? I don't report that out to you because that's my management, that's my background information that's happening. And it's a goal, but ultimately when I've completed that project, I will come forward and say, I started here and here's where we are. If you'd like to be updated on each one of those as we go along, I sure can. But it would take quite some time because again, there's 40 of them in the air at any one given time. That's just a small portion of each one of those days. It's, 10 hours goes by. Those took me 35 minutes and they were done every Tuesday for the last month is what we've been doing. So how would you like me to report it, I guess? I have all kinds of information for the board. And maybe Craig, you can give us some examples, or Barb can, some examples of how superintendents might do that.
Chair, Mr. Norton, I first want to, and this is without patronage, I want to make sure that that we honor Director Buck's comments. I heard you, and I'm feeling your pain as well. And I also feel that urgency and that need to move forward. I'm not sure why that is, but I'm there with you. I think just tonight I think this is a really important conversation, right? Because now you're getting to the heart of what is this relationship and how will you move forward and what do you expect from Mr. Norton? It's an honest and transparent conversation. And I've been watching your tapes. I haven't seen that before. Got to be honest with you. Okay. Frank, you're following the model. You're doing those things that I see other superintendents doing. But let me also go one step further. You may be the best superintendent this district has ever had. They don't know that yet. And there's no way they could know that. And it's not fair to you to say, we're going to judge you, because I think an evaluation is about judging. It's about objectively looking at, did this person meet the expectations? How can you do that if you haven't necessarily set those expectations? So I think, and I'm not trying to play with semantics, it may be more that you need to have a level setting conversation and you need to have this kind of discourse in order to understand what things you're doing, what do you need more of, what do you need less of, what are the priorities, so that you're all coming away from the table with a clear set of expectations and how the superintendent will be evaluated, right? If you could come to some understanding around those points tonight, and again, realizing you have an election, right, tomorrow, and the board may or may not be the same people around the table, but I think it at least gives you a sense of direction in terms of how you're going to proceed. And it may have direct bearing then on whether you decide to extend the contract or not, right? Because you might find that the expectations or the goals that you've set out are not something that Frank thinks are realistic. Maybe he has some thoughts, given his time here, to give you some feedback. And I don't know if you've had that opportunity yet with this board. But I do know that there are things going on. I'm aware, because I've been spending a lot of time since our last meeting talking to people within the district. Not talking about you, but what are they hearing? What are they seeing? What are the points of pride? Where is their sensitivity? What needs to happen differently? And how does this board move forward? You just heard a financial forecast, right? There's a little bit of uncertainty about that, right? You were just given some data about enrollment, right? There's some uncertainty about that. I think that you are in a perfect place tonight in this workshop to decide how you want to move ahead, whether you call it an appraisal, evaluation, review, whatever. But I think it's about having that discourse about what you need, what you expect, what Frank is doing and what his goals are and what progress he's made. I think you would probably benefit from hearing that story.
And we did start this process with that, with Frank giving us some of his goals and things, as he mentioned, that he wanted to work toward.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I feel like we've kind of been wishy-washy on, are we using that? Are we moving forward with that? Are we looking at it as a formal evaluation? And after hearing, Nikki talk tonight, and I know that others have expressed the same thing. Maybe it's not a formal evaluation, but it's just something to help guide our conversation. And if that is what Mr. Norton has been using and looking, at, then maybe that we can say, yes, what we created earlier, what he created earlier, and we kind of all agreed upon, at least informally, may be our guide in our discussion. Now, the only thing that makes me nervous about that is, as you said, it's huge. There are so many pieces to that there's no way we could expect that all of these things are even being worked on. Not every piece of that can happen. So I think it just needs to be clear where in there are the main, what are we really focusing on? Can we make it smaller, or maybe it's that big, but we just need to have the communication about this is where our focus is right now. And as you said, continue the conversation together, and maybe not have it be a formal evaluation, but just, as Jim said, we need the communication and we need to talk about it like we are right now, to have a better idea of moving forward, whether we want to extend the contract or not.
So the document that you have, Mr. Norton, would it be possible, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot in there, but would it be possible, I'm just wondering, to have that like in the board packet? And even if it's not like we go through and we talk about everything, sort of like with the financial report, right? That when we are preparing for the meeting, we can read through, and if there's something where I'm like, hey, what is that? Or I'm interested, I want to know more about this, or this doesn't make sense to me, or whatever that is, that then each of us individually could call that out to say, not that you would have to spend an hour, going through every aspect of it, but, that we would have it to look at and be able to then, have those conversations with you at the board meeting. I personally don't, I do have the benefit of having the agenda meetings, although, it's mostly just about what is on the agenda. But otherwise, I don't really feel that there's communication missing between meetings. But there could be more, I guess, in the meeting or in that kind of supplemental thing if there's information to share with us that way. That's my feeling about it.
And Chair Ostendorf, this is not an admonishment. You please understand, you have access that other board members do not, right? So that affords you a little different opportunity than perhaps, but what you just described is absolutely a best practice. And it's something that I do see other superintendents doing with their board. It is creating that medium by which that broader communication can occur, and board members can be informed uniformly and consistently. And then to your point, coming back to the table or at the workshop, if people have a need for additional information or comment.
Can I ask a question? So this agenda meeting, who's on that committee?
Me and Arlen.
So kind of like how we opened up this workshop to do the legislative and financial report, couldn't we slide the agenda meeting kind of like this? And that way, like, we can all be told the information at once instead of just always being held with two people?
A board decision. But I think also, from the standpoint of Frank's time, this is a board decision, and I'm not trying to interfere with how you decide to fashion this.
We went, let me help you here. We went to a workshop to cut back on the time the staff was putting in on committees. We had finance committee, we had personnel committee, legislative and policy committee, operations. Every month the staff was getting ready for them and board meetings. So then we come to board meetings and then talk about it again. So we're trying to save time by staff by having this workshop setting. We haven't done really personnel much. We haven't done anything with personnel as to any new hires, which we were before. Operations, we hear a little bit about the solar, the lights. Legislative policy, every month we look at policies. The finance, we took the first month from the preceding month. So that's all covered, but now we throw in a superintendent search. It even gives us even more to do during the workshop. So we have to decide, What do we want to do?
Director Bryant, I think
Do you wanna
tonight,
move it?
just the communication conversation is perhaps your single most important
Yeah,
priority
I'm a
right
big
now.
communication person. I'm
Okay.
not gonna let that one go.
Then I think the secondarily would be what does the future conversation look like in terms of board communication with the superintendent or feedback on things? Then I think we should talk about the search. Because if you think about it, the search probably doesn't matter. What we're talking about right now is what's in front of us. This is what matters. And I heard a couple of you use the term success. You want the person in this position, right, to be successful. How will that best occur, and how do you facilitate that in the interest of your students, right, and the community? So I think the communication piece is absolutely essential tonight. You can talk about after this meeting, a workshop about how you want to think about moving forward, whether you extend the contract, if Frank is willing to continue in this role, other level setting, looking ahead further out, what do the next 30, 60, 90 days look like, and how you want to proceed. And again, I believe Barb is on here, but I don't think she can speak. But I think if she could, she would offer again that if you wish, you could engage in another conversation with this and or the new board members around best practices for assessment, options for your search, depending upon if you want to engage that with the school board association or a recruitment firm. You could simply appoint Frank. You could conduct your own search, although I would suggest strongly the board does not conduct its own search.
Right.
I've worked with a couple of districts. They would also tell you that, and I can give you names if you would like, where the board actually using their own staff tried to conduct the search. That's not healthy. So again, I promise to be brief, be good, and be gone. What other questions do you have for me this evening?
I guess I'll just say, we're missing 3 board members tonight. To have this conversation is good, but it probably needs to be carried over when we have the 7 here. This is good conversation tonight. We can grow on that, go on that, and take it going forward to see where we will go to the next step. But we're just slowly kicking the can down the road. We have to make a decision down the road here soon. But I don't think it's fair that we have 4 of us here and the other 3 are not with us at this time. So, and not that we can make a decision during the workshop, but the fact is, I say we, hate to use the term, I just used it, kick it to the next meeting to when we have all 7 here to finalize or come to some type of consensus as to what we want to do.
Yes, sure.
So it is on the agenda for the next 2 board meetings, workshops.
Okay.
So we've already pre-planned that basically. If you would like, I can add a suggestion for communication, include my notes as to the evaluation process that we started. This tip, I can include that in there and then make updates on the progress basically on those items that we agreed. Some I agreed to or had a discussion about several
I
months
thought
ago.
we agreed.
I think we also in the next meeting have to put in there, either way, referendum results for next board meeting
Mhm.
as to what yay or nays, how we go forward. So we can just have a referendum discussion after tomorrow at the next board meeting at workshop.
Mhm.
I just think it's.
Yep.
It's an important topic tomorrow on the agenda, on the ballot.
Thank you again. I'm
Thank you, Mr.
honored by your
Walsh.
time.
Always good to see you.
I will remain for the upcoming meeting for any questions, comments, or concerns. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I think we're pretty much through our workshop things unless anyone has anything else. We could do like a 5-minute break if we wanted. Okay,
Whatever.
all right, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So,
Second, don't all speak at once. Okay, motion to adjourn by Mr. Bryant, second by Ms. Tift. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carried. We are adjourned at 6:15 and our regular meeting will convene at 6:20. Yeah, get out of this. 7th, and I will call to order a regular meeting of the Red Wing School Board. We have Mr. Bryant, Ms. Tift, Ms. Buck, myself, Chair Ostendorf, present. Mr. Dirks is joining us virtually, and we have Superintendent Mr. Norton with us. All right. And Mr. Bryant is going to read our mission statement.
Thank you. The mission of the Red Wing Public Schools is to educate and inspire all students as they realize their full potential and become respectful, responsible, and productive citizens.
All right, does anybody have anything that they would like to add or amend on the agenda? If not, I'm looking for a motion to approve that.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and all of our votes are going to be roll call because we have a virtual member. So I will start with Ms. Buck.
Aye.
Mr. Dirks? I remember turning your mic on now.
Aye.
Okay, Ms. Tift?
I too.
Mr. Bryant?
Aye.
And chair votes aye, so that carries 5-0. All right, then we have a copy of our educational plan in our packet, so always important to keep in mind. Next up are recognitions and upcoming events. Does anybody have anything that they want to share? Right, go
I
ahead.
have to try and remember this from memory because I forgot my book at home. Okay, so the Red Wing High School has entered into the Language Bowl in Lower Sioux on Saturday. It's gonna be at the Casino Hotel Event Center, starting at 9 as breakfast and then 10 as the actual bowl. We have 4 teams from Red Wing High School going to the bowl. And there will be, so far there's 16 registered teams. So all the community is welcome to show up to Lower Sioux. Is it Morton? Morton, Minnesota, yep. And, you know, support our teammates. Now we have a lot of native and non-native students that are participating. So this is pretty big for the district. And they're pretty proud. We've got a lot of language learners that are really excelling that are not Dakota relatives. And they're so proud to be representing their school at this language bowl. And here's my thing. We've got a lot of liability, right? And so I'm just planting seeds. If it doesn't happen, you know, whatnot, but maybe in the future when we do participate in things like this, we as a district can show our support by lending a transportation for those students who can't get their parents, get them down. So then we don't rely on Nikki Buck and other to get students down to this, and that, you know, that it can be a community, like, you know, support. I'm not saying that we can get it up and running by this weekend, but just a seed in the future maybe. Or if somebody has a magic wand and can get it happening, contact language instructor Barry Hand for further assistance, I guess, or information. So pretty proud of that.
I'll just piggyback on that. I attended Mr. Hand's class here a couple of weeks ago. They talked about that. They had the teams up there and all that, and he even gave them extra. The kids that didn't want to participate in the language bowl could go there and support of their other classmates and get 30 points.
The same amount of points as the participants.
Yeah, same as they participate, but they have to show up. They can't just say I was there. So, but I have to say I was there. Philip was there, Mr. Nemenich, Mr. Skeen, Michael, I can't remember his last name. We all sat and watched this class, and the passion that Mr. Hand has was evident with the kids, because he made them talk the language and all that, which I didn't know. I apologize. But afterwards, we carried on another 45-minute conversation with Mr. Hand. The passion, the excitement he has for coming to this school from a Twin Cities school, I can't remember what it was. He says, he's just appreciative. He said, every kid's got a desk. I got lights that work. I don't have that in the old high school. I had kids sitting on the floor. So, but then him and Mr. Nemesis are talking to, I think we're gonna see even more out of that area next year. So we'll have Mr. Nemesis and Mr. Hand will do that. So I just want to give kudos, because he welcomed me right in, and we had, I just spent, what is it, an hour and a half, I think, that day, or whatever, hour and a half, something like that, and then flew by. And he gave me information to learn the Dakota language, which I will do. Some books to look up and get that, so, but it was new, but you're right, Nikki, there was Native American students in the class, which was great, because it's open to everybody.
The language.
So I gotta do that more.
Language, it belongs to the land.
And I took it on because of, Nikki said, you should go do it, so I did it. I couldn't do it one time, but this other time I did. And I was very happy to do it, very happy, very glad. And I'll probably go back. I don't think I have anything else. I was really pumped after that. So.
It's a little bit after the fact, but there was a school play, The Birds, this past weekend that I got to go see. That was really, really cool. Lots of, I forget how big the cast was. It seemed bigger than normal, but I don't know, maybe that was just, it's been a while since I've been there. But it was really a good show. So congratulations to all. And they had 9 seniors among the cast and crew. So kind of a big group of outgoing kids that one of mine being one of them, had a very emotional end of their very, the end, it's the beginning of the end now that they're starting to have those last fall play, last that.
Yeah. So I gotta ask a question on that. I saw that come across I think it was Instagram. There must be another play. There was a movie called The Birds.
Yeah, it's not
It's
the
not
Alfred
that
Hitchcock.
one. Okay, it wasn't Alfred Hitchcock. Okay, I saw that. I thought, I don't think it is that, but I got that. I wished I could have. I wasn't around, but I got it late notice. I'd like to have attended. So it looked pretty good.
And auditions were today for the high school musical, so that will be happening in, I should know the date, but January sometime.
January, February?
Towards the end of
Okay.
January, yeah.
Let us know when it is. So
Yes, hopefully before, right? Before it takes place. Any other recognitions, upcoming events?
Sorry. Happy Native American Heritage
yes.
Month, Indigenous Heritage Month.
you didn't think of that earlier?
Well, I live it, so it's an everyday occurrence for me. But did you
I'm just
hear,
testing you.
did you hear about the ABC News? Did you hear about it? They called us indigenous creatures.
Big mistake.
Well, we took it and we made jokes about it, so it's all good. But yes, happy
Congratulations.
Indigenous Heritage Month, so.
There is the Veterans Day
Yeah.
ceremony
Good one.
on Friday at the high school. I'm sorry, I do not know what time.
10 a.m.
9:20.
Is it
9:20?
9:20? Oh, I want to know because we have our singers and drummers up here. So who's singing and drumming for Prairie Island? Because we have it at 9 a.m. too. So that better be something I find out.
Yeah. If they think it's at 10, they'll be late, so.
Oh, yeah. Well, I have it at 10 for
Look
here
real quick here.
and 9 for on Prairie Island.
It's in the district email, but I don't remember. I just know that I read it in there amongst other things.
Yeah. Okay.
It's at 9:20 in the auditorium.
Okay, any other recognitions, upcoming events?
Yeah,
All right, so we are on to public comment, and I know we have a couple people here that would like to speak tonight. So I will give the background information, or our guidelines, actually. So one, we expect that comments be limited to 2 minutes per person, and that a representative be selected to speak on behalf of a group of individuals attending the meeting for the same topic. School board members will listen to the public comments, but will not discuss the topic at the meeting. The superintendent and/or school board chair may provide a response outlining steps the school district has taken or will take to address the concerns. A summary of the school district's actions in response to public comment will be provided to the school board, individuals submitting public comment and/or public at a later date as appropriate. 3, we expect that comments remain respectful and appropriate and not identify any current or former students, their families, or staff members by name. All right, so first up, I believe we have Roger Kittelson. Did I say that correctly?
You bet.
So have you come on up to this computer in the front here?
Great, thank you. Thanks for allowing me to visit and speak. I'm not new to Red Wing at all. I was a long-term sub, Twin Bluff for second grade for Zach Will last year. Enjoyed it for 2.5 months. Got to know the staff a little bit better and a little bit of stuff that goes on in Red Wing. But I am a substitute teacher in Goodhue and Sembroda, Mazeppa, Lake City, and in Red Wing after this election. But right now I'm running as independent for House 20A. And if you heard my ads or stuff, the real focus is a half a day preschool program for every 4-year-old child in Minnesota. I don't have to tell this group how important it is that we focus on education. I'm a businessman, just like everybody here. We're in the business. And when we have a higher educated populace, we all do better, all right? So that's what I want to share with this school board and with the community here. The other thing I want to share with is how important it is as a former school board member, father, grandfather, how important it is that the parents be involved with their children's education every day. Do the homework when the kids come home, help them with their homework, and just read. I mean, read for fun, read for value. But anyway, I just want to let you know if I am successful, I'll be back. And I'll be back to listen and learn from this board to see what I can do to make education better in the state of Minnesota. So thank you for letting me speak.
Good luck.
You betcha, guys.
And then Tracy Carlisle.
Sorry, Dan. I just wanted to clarify, I thought I heard you say 2 minutes, isn't it 3 minutes?
I thought we had 2.
Could you clarify the policy, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Anna?
Yeah.
On the,
Says 3.
Is it
yeah,
3?
it says
Okay.
3 in here.
He's not here.
Do I
Well,
leave
therefore,
one?
yeah,
Oh,
he's online.
oh,
Thank you.
However, it needs to get to the school board members, I am providing them.
Thank you.
So, and I was told I need to provide one to the public. Do I leave this here, Mr.?
If anybody back there would like a copy, you can raise your hand. You have another one? Chief, you see that back here?
This one does not have one of the pieces of paper. So my 3 minutes starts now. Okay. I just wanted to say, I've had many conversations with the new administration, and I greatly appreciate the new administration. I look forward to the things they have to do in the future for our school district. I also wanted to bring up on November 3rd of this year, there was a GCED board meeting. That was a great meeting that I was able to attend. There was interactive technology provided. Unfortunately, they must have had some technical difficulties because I do not see it online at this time. Our Red Wing representative got some great information about the dyslexia program that they introduced. She was also able to advocate and to get the executive director evaluation to be on the December agenda after the superintendent's meeting on November 30th. Then I wanted to direct you to the information that I provided to you tonight. I don't have it in front of me, but I believe the first set of documents is the licensure. That is the licensure of your previous director of teaching and learning. I'm sorry I was not able to print out the current director of teaching and director of teaching and learning licensure. I would encourage you to go online and look at what that is compared to the past one. The second one, cell phone policy. I would just encourage you as a board to make sure that the school board policy, the cell phone policy is consistent across the board. There seems to be the district policy,
There seems to be a high school procedure policy, and there also seems to be this the September 2nd email that the principal sent out. So I would just encourage you to compare those 3 documents and look at the similarities and look at the differences. I would encourage you that we have consistency across the board within each of our schools so that the teachers can feel supported with that consistency. I would also encourage you that with the athletics program, that for children who are underage, that we know who's taking pictures of them on the field, that we not have photographers taking pictures of underage students without proper consent. Please review any policies that might be out there on our handbook, in our athletic policy, anywhere else that it may be. Thank you for your time this evening.
All right. Next up, our referendum planning. So Ms. Robertson, I think you're on the call.
Yes, I am here. I just wanted to let everybody know that we addressed 15 groups, several hundred people, and got very good feedback. We just gave them the facts about things over the last 2 months. So we'll see what tomorrow brings. But I also wanted to let you know that we will on our website have updated information as wards and precincts come in. And if you have anything else you'd like to know, or suggestions, I'd appreciate to hear them now.
I don't have a suggestion. I have a piece of paper I left at home for you that was from another school district, a newsletter. I give them to you, something that other people are doing. Maybe we could, maybe it's helpful, maybe it's not, but I'm just gonna still keep giving them to you. How's that?
Thank you so much. I appreciate those, Jim.
I got it today. I'll get it to you though soon.
I don't think there's anything else. No, I'll just.
Thank you for the information, man.
Yeah, thank you for on this.
Yes, thank you. Regardless of how it turns out, thank you for all of your work. All right, school board reports. There's nothing for negotiations. Agenda minutes were emailed. Others? Did you want to talk about the equity committee today, or do you want to wait till?
No, I can.
Okay.
So at the equity team meeting today, actually I had got Martina in contact with my auntie, Stephanie Autumn. She is in restorative justice practices with the the justice system. Her background information is she was active in AIM, boots on the ground. And she's been in that fight with Leonard Peltier, if you don't know who he is, from the beginning. So she has a lot of knowledge, and she works for this, I don't know if she owns the company but what she does is she brings restorative justice practices to Indigenous communities. But the thing is they provide it for you for free if you have an Indigenous population, but then you just rope in everybody else underneath them. Just kind of like I said, how our grant systems work, we have less rules and hoops to jump through, so we can rope everybody else underneath us. So they had I unfortunately double booked myself. I was supposed to be in that meeting, so I don't know how that went. Well, I do. Martina and Auntie Steph both said it went really well. We're gonna meet next week in person. And then I think Martina is going to start roping her into the diversity and equity training, or not training. Okay. What's the I stand for? DEI.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Okay, that one. So she's going to start bringing her into those meetings to start getting how we can utilize those services in our systems. So, and she had a whole presentation about we don't really have how to respond. And for everybody else that is non-ethnic in this room, we have set ourselves up. We know what happened about 10 years, didn't we? We got sued as a district because we didn't have any, and they have never been in place since I've been here. And so we are in a very, very, very dangerous spot. So the more we can have something in how we guide that problem, the better off we are. So, it's all good and all positive, it's just making sure that, honestly, we need to, nothing happen in between that time, you know? And we have to really, take this matter seriously. Because like I said, it's never been in place since I've been here. So, and then I think that's it with that. I had to jump out early because I had to come here. So that's as far as I got with that, at the meeting today.
Any other? Any other?
Technology, yeah, I left my notebook at home, I'm sorry. So I'm really going off memory.
Yeah.
And my computer isn't working either. It's not letting me hook up to the internet for some reason. But, technology, oof, that was a little bit ago, so
Was it a good meeting?
it was a good meeting.
Tony does a good job.
He does. I really enjoy that. And, cause I'm not technology savvy at all and stuff like that. So I'm basically there to learn pretty much. And then take notes and then give the notes to you, but it doesn't help when I don't have the notes with me.
That's okay. If there's anything that you want to bring up at the next meeting, that's fine.
Or am I supposed to also type them to Lisa too? Okay.
You can just say them at the next meeting. Is there any others that met in the last couple of weeks? Okay. All right, so we are on to our administrative reports. So, Mr. Martin?
So I got two inside here. One you probably read inside the paper, which was an article in the newspaper, Rise Up Red Wing. Name will now replace the Red Wing Youth Outreach and the Everyday Hand Join, along with the new logo and their mission statement and vision statement. So that's exciting. 30 years worth of work now combining together. They have a new direction and a new vision as to where they want to be able to go. So just wanted to bring that to the public's attention. And again, the article is in the newspaper if you care to read more on it. The other one really just inside here is just our field trips. List of field trips is included periodically inside there, so that you know where our kids are going. Just wanted to bring it to your attention that it's always included, so that the list itself now is available. The other thing that we talked about inside the workshop that isn't in the packet necessarily inside here is I think that a good spot for my administrative reports based on the evaluation that we talked. I think I'm going to present that so I can give you periodic updates on the progress of the district, and not major things, but just progress basically. So I'll be bringing that forth.
Yes.
How did we miss not talking about Rise Up when we both attended that meeting here the other day?
Yeah.
You're on the board. I was there too. Yeah, we attended that meeting when they announced that. Small at the church there, Covenant Church there that night, and very exciting. And then there's something on, I heard on the radio today, the 19th of November, a fundraiser for them. So maybe we should,
Dueling pianos.
yeah, dueling pianos, that's it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, how do we miss not doing that? You and I both missed that on,
Oh, as a
Recognitions
recognitions of
and all that.
upcoming events.
Thank you, Mr. Norton.
All right. I think we are up to, consent agenda. Does anyone have anything that they would like to pull from the consent agenda? Going once, going twice. If not, I am looking for a motion to approve that.
Second?
All right, and again, this will be a roll call vote. So beginning with Mr. Dirks.
Aye.
Ms. Tift? Aye. Mr. Bryant?
Aye.
Ms. Buck?
Aye.
And chair votes aye, so that passes 5-0. Count how many of us there are.
Yeah.
Next up is our resolution accepting donations and grants. So we have a $200 donation from United Lutheran Church for the Red Wing High School food shelf, and a $5,000 donation from Charities Aid Foundation America for the Twin Bluff Middle School playground. So first of all, thank you to both of those organizations for their contributions. And then
I'll make a motion to approve the 2 donations and thank them very much for their generous donations.
Mhm.
do I have a second?
I second it.
All right, so we have a motion to accept the resolution accepting donations and grants made by Mr. Bryant, second by Ms. Buck. And that is a roll call, and we'll begin with Ms. Tippett.
Aye.
Mr. Bryant,
Aye.
Ms. Buck,
Aye.
Mr. Dirks,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. So that carries 5-0 as well. And thank you again.
Nina won't be done.
Okay, next we have some policies to approve and review. So we've got policy 516 for student medication, where we were adding Narcan as an option in there. This is our 3rd reading of that, our 3rd and final reading, so we can vote to approve that tonight. Does anyone have any discussion about it?
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
Just about the procedure of how I just am really trying to understand how we moved it forward, because why? Didn't we put it in emergency to move that one forward?
Yes.
And how come?
We are still doing it now.
Well, how come we put it in emergency? Why couldn't we just decide yes now? Why do we have to put it in emergency? I'm trying to understand that process.
So in order to enact a policy, we have to go through 3 readings of it, unless we feel that it is an emergency situation. We opted to put it forward as an emergency policy because waiting those 3 readings would have been 6 weeks of time. And so that, in case there was an incident in those 6 weeks, we weren't waiting until then to get people trained and that kind of thing. But that emergency policy is only good for a year. So we've still been doing the 3 readings so that if we vote to approve it tonight, then it is like a real policy in a sense.
Okay, so it's just been
have to-
enacted in this
Yes.
meantime until we get it.
Yes.
Okay, so there's where I was confused. I'm like, well, if it still says 3 readings and we're doing 3 readings, why did it have to go into emergency? I didn't realize it was in effect until we are
Yes.
getting it. Okay.
Yeah, but it would,
Now I
any
understand.
emergency policy automatically becomes ineffective.
In effect.
Mhm.
after a year. So we would have had to do this at some point
Yes.
anyway, so we just decided to keep
It just buys
pushing
us
through.
time.
Yes. Yep. All right. Any other discussion, questions, comments?
I will make the motion to approve the revisions to policy 516 as presented.
Okay. Second?
I'll second.
Okay, so motion to approve the revisions to policy 516, motion made by Ms. Tiff, second by Ms. Buck. Any other discussion? Then we will start our vote with Ms. Tift.
Aye.
Mr. Bryant?
Aye.
Ms. Buck?
Aye.
Mr. Dirks?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, so that passes 5-0. Okay, then we have a whole bunch that we have had in our first and second readings in previous meetings. Policies 104, which is school district mission statement, 404, employment background checks, 420, sexually transmitted infections, 506, student discipline, 508, ESY for certain students, 509, enrollment of non-resident student, 517, student recruiting, 522, Title IX sex non-discrimination, and 525, violence prevention. Is there any discussion about any of those?
I just want to talk about the discipline one.
Okay.
You know, words look great. And that's just all that it's been in that since I've graduated from here. I got in a lot of trouble in this district because I handled your disciplinary issues because they weren't in place. So with all this work that we're doing with the, how we respond to racism and disciplinary, I hope this takes care of everything. I want to be able to, not that I'm upset with my discipline I got from Red Wing Public Schools. At the end of the day, it's what saved me in my own life. But I got something different from Perry and a lot of people didn't get either. And that's what I'm trying to deliver. I want every student that leaves our building to be as successful as I am. I want them to be proud as I am. I want them to be as healthy as I am, even though I have a kidney disease. And so when we take a look at this disciplinary, the words are great, but we need to start acting by them. And we have to be on the same page. And so I just want everybody to know that, like, these are policies, but there's nothing that protects our students. It's policy. They don't protect us. Because if they did, I wouldn't have to do your job. And then I get in trouble for it. Everybody is accountable. And we don't come hard on our children. Not like they did to me. So when we look at this and how we handle this, we all have to be on the same board. I mean, not school board, but on the same board for all of our kids. So I just wanted to make that statement. Mhm.
Is there any other discussion about policies?
I move to approve revisions to policies 104, 404, 420, 506, 508, 509, 517, 528, and 525 as presented. And thank you, Nikki.
Mhm.
Okay, is there a second?
I second.
Okay. Motion to approve policies 104, 404, 420, 506, 508, 509, 517, 522, and 525. Made by Mr. Bryant, second by Ms. Buck. Any other discussion? Okay, so we will start the roll call with Ms. Tift. Aye. Mr. Bryant?
Aye.
Ms. Buck?
Aye.
Mr. Dirks?
Aye.
And chair votes aye, so that 5-0. Okay. Next up, so this will be kind of a placeholder here in our agenda moving forward, kind of for the foreseeable future, I guess, until other decisions are made for the superintendent process. So, you know, I think your point during the workshop that there's only 4 of us here. There were things that, you know, I would like to move forward with making some, or five, we have 5. Sorry, Arlen, you still count. I guess my perspective, I would like to kind of follow the recommendation that Mr. Morris had to extend a contract, or if agreeable, extend the contract with Mr. Norton and look at a search potentially, you know, another year down the road. But I don't know if we really want to vote on that without, you know, others here. So I'm kind of open to, you know, what other people feel about that. So Mr. Dirks, I will let you go. Hand raised.
All right, thank you. I'm sorry I could not be at or I was not at the workshop, and I'm here remotely tonight, but circumstances dictate that I do this way tonight. I did hear part of the discussion on the superintendent. I do feel it would be nice to let incoming board members voice their feelings to the existing board. Not to say that they would make any decisions at this time, but I would hope that we as a board would reach out to whoever is selected to come in and see what their thoughts are on this. I will go right out on a limb right now that I personally think right now the best way to proceed, and this depends on if Frank is willing to do this. He's done a great job in my opinion. I would love to see him stay here based on what I've seen to this point. I am of the opinion we should look seriously at seeing if we can negotiate a contract extension to go the following year 2024, June of 2024, end of June 2024, get him to current regular superintendent pay. And I don't like this term that we have to constantly use, interim superintendent. I think it's a little demeaning that Frank's making the decisions, but he's got that carryover in the interim, which he may or may not be here in the future. I would like to see us get beyond that and see if we can go that way. And of course, this would depend if Frank is willing to do this, not only just to see if the board is, but that's my thoughts at this time. I don't think it should be decided tonight. But I think we could look at it. I'm very reluctant to make superintendent ideas when I'm not going to be here next year, but I think it would be prudent to really look at that concept. So thank you for letting me voice my opinion.
Madam Chair, I know this is highly unusual. I know this is not a court of law. I'm going to ask if I could approach and be present at the table for any questions you may have.
Sure.
Well, you're kind enough to sit around here and come down and join us.
Well, there's more to come. And I mean that in a positive spirit.
Does anyone else have anything else you want to discuss about this right now, or?
I think we pretty much said it at the workshop, and now we have 5.
Mhm.
Right.
We're still missing 2.
Yeah.
So to be fair, I mean, Arlo's got a chance to voice his opinion, that's great. We all kind of did, but I think as health, 7 of us together, decide then what we want to do.
And thank you, Arlen, for voicing your opinion, and I agree with you.
All right, well, I think unless there's anything else, we'll move on from this
Unless
topic.
Mr.
So
Morris
you
has
came up here,
anything
unless you have something else you want to share at this time? Other thoughts?
Oh, I'm going to get fired before I get started. So, no, this is serious, and I please know this, and I'll stop with a commentary. I want to first of all acknowledge and thank Mr. Dirks. He and I have a long history in this district. He's been a tremendous friend. I'm getting to meet you for the first time tonight. This district is really important. And while I've served in public office, either as an elected or appointed official for over 20 years in this state, I've come to realize some things. And one of those is recently I've had the opportunity to mentor some folks who are thinking about running for various offices. And just recently, a young lady in West Lakeland Township. But I want each of you to know, and Arlen, thank you for acknowledging, recognizing my father, who served where you are. This is the toughest elected job that there is. And you don't get a lot of things. And yet, if you think about it within the context of things, it's perhaps the most important elected job that there is, because what you do and the decisions you make really affect people's lives. And you don't see the fruits of those decisions or benefits until sometime down the road. And it's critically important to the vibrancy of this community. You have a lot going on here. You have a lot of really positive things going on in this community, and I'm not blowing smoke. Don't lose sight of that, please. Build on that. Take the time to honor what you have and what you have available to you. It's easy to lose that. Govern without the politics, especially at this level. And that's hard to do these days. But I'm going to plead with you and I'm saying this, I will continue to engage with you as long as you engage with me. I will come back, I don't care how many times, how many meetings, or how long it takes to help you get to the end goal. You have a person that stepped forward that, quite frankly, in this environment, and this is not about Red Wing, but this environment today, there are a lot of people leaving superintendent positions. They're stepping away, they're stepping aside, right? Because of the challenges. And I mean this to current and prospective future people sitting here. I would encourage you to think about taking the time to come back and think about what's next. What's next in terms of contract, search, what have you. I've shared with Ms. Dorn, whether you elect the Minnesota School Board Association or not. And I want to make sure you understand this. I have no interest in taking on additional work, but I will volunteer my time and services to consult with you. I'm happy to confer with Frank. I've shared with some of you, I know that he has a circle and he has a good circle, but I think sometimes, and we recommend this, whether it's a new superintendent in a district or persons who are new to the superintendent game, to have a mentor or coach, someone who is unbiased, has no connections whatsoever, that you can confide in and run things across and get some honest feedback about. And you may not want my services, but I'm going to make those available to you. So on behalf of my family and my upbringing in this community, we can do it better if we put our minds to it. And I believe that when there's a problem, when there's a really huge task, well-minded individuals, if they're committed, will find the solution. So whether you're a current member, an interim, or whatever we're going to call you, Frank, because I don't like that either, but whether interim, hybrid, sort of semi-permanent, or a future prospective board member, I wish you all my very best for continued success. And I sincerely mean that to each of you. Thank you.
Thanks for volunteering. 1973?
Don't even, please. Harlan. Thank you.
Old Central High.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig, for doing it for the class of 73.
Thanks, Jim. Director Brian.
I'll do the math.
All right. Upcoming meetings and future topics. So one of the things that we need to do is have a special meeting to canvass the general election results. So from the Goodhue County Auditor, the county, municipal, townships, or school districts that have general election or special election items on the state general ballot must have their canvass, board meet, and certify results between the 3rd and 10th day after the election. That means canvassing will take place between November 11th and November 18th. However, November 11th is Veterans Day and no public business shall be transacted except in cases of necessity. So we need to decide on a date. Basically that week of the 14th through the 18th. All Monday through Friday that week are available as far as the district is concerned. But so I know we are missing 2 people tonight and, we may have to pick a date that does not necessarily work for them. But instead of me just picking a date, I wanted to.
And I don't think current people on the ballot are at that meeting.
Are
It's
they?
just, I don't think so.
Okay, so it's just
so
us.
I think
you're
it's
running-
just people that are not on the ballot.
Oh, so you're not to be there?
Paul and I won't be there, so you have to decide,
Okay.
the 3 of you, and Harlan tonight.
Okay.
So just pick a date.
I
It
like
doesn't take
Mondays.
long.
I have Mondays carved out already.
Yeah.
But I'm very flexible to wait to see what everybody else is, but as of right now, I'm good with Monday.
Yeah, that works for me. Okay. Yeah,
It's
for
not
me,
very-
Mondays are kind of my
It's
school
not
board
very long.
day.
They're not very long.
Same here. It's not a long meeting.
5-10 minutes.
Really?
I think it was 6 minutes last year.
So my suggestion, you pick a time that's convenient for you all, and then Arlen.
So we just need
before you there,
Pam's
before.
input on this.
And I think she
Just
can
say-
probably,
yeah.
she's usually, I mean, I don't want to speak for her, but.
No, is this something that we, like, somebody can say that, like, before, did he agree to Monday?
Arlen, he just put his hand in. Go ahead, Arlen.
Give me
We
a-
can't hear you.
Yeah, sorry, had my mouth shut for a minute again, even though it was open. I will be available anytime you schedule a meeting next week. I will make it work.
Okay.
You can also looking at a morning meeting for canvassing or something too. It doesn't have to be evening necessarily if that works better for anybody. So I'm just gonna make a comment. I think incumbents that are on the board are part of that, but it's certainly worth checking into it. But
I don't-
so
I don't-
Lisa, I'm sure you.
I'm available anytime. I'll make it.
Okay. I don't know if Pam will respond, but I can text her too. So is there a time that works? I think we have an agenda committee meeting at a certain time.
Yep, I have to stay evening,
Nine.
7-day job.
Okay.
Yeah, I would just keep it at either 5 or 6.
Okay, what would you guys prefer, 5 or 6? Does it matter?
5 works for me.
Okay. Okay.
And we meet here
At
at the same spot, yeah.
Okay. Let's plan on 5 PM on Monday, November 14th. Arlen?
Community
It's like
again.
it's-
I'm just wondering, do we want, I don't think we need to go through the process for just, ratifying the vote meeting to have all the technology, anything, if we can have everybody in person. I don't think we need to have a YouTube video of it and stuff. And that's just me expressing my opinion. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, it should be pretty short and sweet, right?
You should just get the ballot and the election results for the school board, and then you certify them, that's all.
Okay. Got it. Okay. We will also be adding a closed session for preliminary consideration of allegations on next meeting, November 21st. So probably at the end of our meeting, so that it's the easiest to arrange. Any other, there was something you wanted to move or add? Did you already add it in there?
We'll put it on at the agenda.
Oh, okay, okay. Anything else that anyone wants to add or update with upcoming meetings?
I think we're just gonna talk about the referendum results on the workshop on the 21st,
Yes, I added that. I did add that.
so.
Okay. Anything else anyone needs to bring up? If not, we're looking for a motion to adjourn.
So
Second.
Was a tie. Okay, motion to adjourn by Mr. Bryant, second by Ms. Buck. We'll start the voting with Mr. Bryant.
Aye.
Ms. Buck?
Aye.
Mr. Derricks?
Aye.
Ms. Hift? Aye. And chair votes aye, so that passes 5-0. We are adjourned at 7:11. See you guys Monday. Lisa, no, I'll talk to you when you come down.